Hello you guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Rebecca. If you haven't been here before, welcome. So today's video is another video about Hulu's Only Murders in the Building. We're going over season 4, episode 4 of the show. And so if you haven't watched season 4, episode 4, then do not watch this video. Go back. I have a video for episode 1 and a video for episode 2 and 3. So if you are not all caught up, go check those out. Before we get into today's video, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, hit the bell notification, all those YouTube-y things. I'm trying to hit 2,000 subscribers by the end of the year, so everything really helps. Liking, subscribing, commenting who you think the killer is, sharing with friends. So yeah, if you like this kind of video as well as bookish content, thrifting, fashion, travel, etc., then make sure to subscribe down below. But enough of that, let's get into today's video, season 4, episode 4, The Stuntman. Oh, the people are gonna be so happy. Okay, this is my dog Scout. He's gonna sit here. So the first thing is that each episode this season has started off with a title that's based on a movie. So The Stuntman is another movie. It's about a Vietnam veteran who stumbles his way basically into a movie shoot, and they convince him to be their stuntman because their last stunt guy I guess died, but they didn't find the body or anything. So this guy comes in and agrees to be their stuntman, and it kind of goes from there. There's a lot of like back and forth, like the guy who is the veteran who is working as the stuntman thinks that the director is out to kill him, so he thinks that like the final stunt that he's doing for the movie is going to end up like ending his life like the same way the last guy died. So there's a lot of bending reality in this, a lot of like we don't know what's for the movie versus what's, you know, actually happening in quote-unquote real life. So yeah, there's this sense of like we don't know what reality actually is here. So next we have a voiceover, which we learn later on is Glenn. We'll come back to that in a little bit. And he says a good stunt double must set the ego aside and just be a maniac, risking life and limb to make their actor look good, because he says all actors are egomaniacs, but stunt people are just maniacs. So we move and we see that Charles is having a dream about Saz. He follows her and he keeps asking her where she's going, and she says paradise. The voiceover says that for a stunt double, their actor is number 1, but for an actor, it's not always the same. Charles ends up coming in after his sleepless night after dreaming about Saz, and he has a second murder board for the trio because he thinks that Saz should have her own murder board in case she actually was the intended victim, because last few episodes they kind of decided that Charles was the intended victim, and he doesn't want Saz to kind of be left in the dust. Like, she deserves her own murder board as well. So Charles says that he and Saz shared everything, including 2 separate girlfriends and a signature style. So obviously they shared Cookie, who left Charles for Saz in the first season. We never met her, but we heard about her. And then Jan, of course, who also dated Charles, went to jail, and then ended up being with Saz later on. Mabel lets us know that the Westies have been freezing her out ever since she started squatting because they don't want her there. And we spy Vince Fish across the Arconia, unwrapping a leg of ham that is in a Portuguese flag. We also obviously know from like last episode that M. Dudenoff apparently moved to Portugal and sends the Westies ham. So I guess we're assuming that that is what's happening here. We learn that Oliver's worried about his relationship with Loretta. Apparently she called him late after she wrapped on set and then said that she had to go. So Oliver took to Instagram stalking her and found a man's arm wrapped around her shoulder, and he's afraid that she's going to be stolen away from him. Because they're looking at Oliver's Instagram to look at Loretta's Instagram, we learn that Saz has an Instagram, and we learn that she was at a place called Concussions the day she died, and this is a stuntman bar, and the trio decide that they better go investigate to see if she talked to anyone the day that she died. Mabel goes back to her squatter's apartment and Howard is there, and he says that he and the pig cuddled like Charles and Camilla. And this is an interesting little tidbit because, I mean, if you know about the royal drama when it comes to the British royals, King Charles, now King Charles, has had a long, sordid past with Camilla. He basically cheated on Princess Diana with Camilla multiple times, and Camilla and he had a relationship before that, and now they're officially together. A lot of people in general don't like Camilla for that reason because they feel like she's a homewrecker. I don't know a ton about British royalty and like the tea behind all that. The Crown is a TV show that kind of covers a lot of, it's a dramatized version of that storyline. But basically, I just wanted to point out that this is another relationship, a tumultuous relationship by a man who cheated on his wife. And his wife, Princess Diana, died a year later, and there are a lot of conspiracy theories surrounding her death, including that people think that it was planned. People say that she was pregnant with another man's baby. And especially and most concerning is the fact that Diana wrote a letter saying that she thought someone was going to try and kill her, and specifically mentioned the brakes in her car not working and like intentionally being sabotaged. And she actually did die in a car accident. The driver was apparently drunk, and that's what happened. And so they've done research to go into this case, and no one has ever found anything or said that that any of these conspiracies are true. But it is interesting that they bring up this relationship that underneath the surface has so many conspiracy theories as well as a very prominent death. So just wanted to point that out. And if you know any more about the royals, or because there are people out there who are very, very invested, and you want to post down below and comment and let us know a little bit more about these conspiracy theories and this tea, go right ahead. I'd love to read about it. So Howard is apartment sitting for Mabel because they need someone to be there in order for it to count as squatting. And Howard really wants Mabel's help with his podcast, animal jobs, but she basically abandons him and says that she doesn't have time for this because she has to follow a lead. Then we hear Howard say, "I'm a sad boy who hates being alone," which honestly, like, the vibes were, me too, Howard, me too. It just made me giggle. And we see that once again, Mabel leaves Howard to the trio kind of use Howard to do their dirty work. Like, they're like, "Howard, do all the boring stuff that we don't want to do." So he stays with the pig, and the trio head to Concussions. As we're on our way to the Stuntman barn, we learn that Oliver has, of course, created a Finsta, a fake Instagram account, under the guise of being a Midwestern woman named Ronnie, to bond with Loretta and keep an eye on this mysterious arm that is around her shoulder and try and get more intel about who this really is. And obviously Mabel says this is a terrible idea because it is. We go to Concussion, the Stuntman's bar, and it says outside, "The Stuntman's Bar, a gathering place for those who take the punches, brave the fires, and make the faces look good, established in 1977. And obviously faces are the actors that these stunt people stunt for. We meet the barkeep, who refuses to speak to Charles even though he bribes him with a whopping $11. And we have another Abraham Lincoln reference, and looking into Abraham Lincoln's death, because before I believe I said that he was like shot from far away. So I did a little bit of research because I was like, this is our second Lincoln reference. This is kind of weird. What's going on with Abe? Facts are that John Wilkes Booth shot Lincoln from behind while standing only 4 feet away with a pistol. So this is, like I said, our second Lincoln reference, and I'm wondering if this is a hint that Saz actually wasn't shot with a hunting rifle from across the Arconia and was actually shot at close range. The trio had initially said that they found glass on the inside of the window, and therefore they decided that the killer must have shot from, another floor. But is it possible that that is a red herring and that in reality, Saz was killed by someone who was right in front of her or just behind her? It's possible, and maybe this is a clue to suggest that, so we can talk more about that later in theories. We also have the stuntmen who come out and say that they don't like faces and that they're actually all asses. Ha ha ha, very funny. And the bark folk are furious because they say the trio are actually profiting off of Saz's death, when in reality we know that they are friends with her and they do want to actually discover who murdered her. Then we get the big twist of this episode, which of course is Ben Glenroy, or his stuntman. So we meet Glenn Stubbins, Ben's stunt double, and he has a really terrible Irish accent. Glenn talks about how his number one was murdered, and that because Ben is dead, he doesn't have a face anymore to stunt for, so he feels like he's only half a man. He also goes around stomping the ground, saying that there are rats everywhere, and we don't know exactly what this means, but we do know that Ben was murdered with rat poison last season, and so it's possible that Glenn is having some sort of traumatic response to that by stomping on fictitious rats that only he can see. And this is another part of the episode where we kind of question reality, or at least Glenn's point of view of reality, because for him the rats are very much real and there, and he's trying to get them to go away, but in reality no one else can see them. So is this a response to the rat poison that murdered Ben Glenroy? It's the only case where we've seen rats show up again, so it's very interesting. We see a Cobra 3 poster and another poster on the wall outside of this back room with a glowing purple light. And we see a doctor go past, and the trio realize they need to get in the back room because that is where Saz was the day before the day that she died. Glenn ends up chasing the trio out and stopping them outside to apologize and say that he is trying to keep up appearances, but that he actually really wants a job working for them in their new movie. The trio agrees to get him a job as long as he helps them get into the back room and learn more about what Saz was doing back there. Glenn ends up bringing Charles to see Dr. Maggie, who is a chiropractor, and Charles asks if Saz was in pain, and Glenn says yes, tons, but she never would have admitted it to him because it's not the stunt person way. They go inside, and Glenn once again says, "Mind the rats." We switch back to Howard and Tammy, who have been squatting at the Dudenoff place, and we notice that a note has been slipped under the door that the Only Murders movie is having open auditions, and you don't need any experience. So Howard decides that this is his big break, and he decides to go to the audition. We find this suspicious, obviously, because someone was walking by and slipped it under the door, and it seems like the kind of thing that they knew would get Howard out of the apartment. So it seems like someone was trying to lure him out so that they could kind of kick Mabel out of the Dudenoff apartment. So Howard takes the bait, he goes and auditions for the Brothers Sisters. Trina and Tawny love Howard and say they are going to nurture him. And so we don't know what that means, but we think that maybe Howard will be in the movie somehow or be more involved in show business. Who knows? But the Brothers Sisters really like him. Charles comes into the chiropractor's office, and Dr. Maggie says that she will talk to him about Saz, but only if he lets her crack his back because he looks so stiff. And then we see Oliver continuing with Mabel. He is still stalking Loretta and says he almost proposed to Loretta, but he didn't because he automatically assumed that the marriage would fail because he apparently always fails. And this has kind of been a theme for Oliver throughout this season, is his constant failures. Howard ends up showing up to Oliver's apartment to basically give Mabel a piece of his mind and tell her that he's not doing her dirty work for her anymore, and that, she didn't give him the time of day and it's a one-sided relationship. And Mabel hurries over to the apartment because she realizes that no one is there to see if Dudenoff shows up, and someone needs to be there because what if he shows up and nobody is squatting? We learn that Saz was planning to transition into a new career because she was tired of a difficult relationship where she felt she was giving more than she was getting. And automatically Charles assumes that this is him, but we don't know that for sure. And Charles and Saz weren't working together at the time, they were just friends. So we do wonder if this relationship actually had anything to do with Charles. It seems like it's more likely that it's maybe Bacula because she was actively working with him, or maybe Jan because Jan is a murderer. So I think that although Charles assumes that he was the difficult relationship, and we all know that Charles can be a bit selfish, I don't think it was actually him that she was referring to. Charles obviously gets his back cracked because that was part of the deal, and has an out-of-body experience where he sees Saz looking much worse, much more beat up, broken arm, broken leg, missing teeth, bleeding, and he says, "Oh my gosh, Saz, what happened?" And she replies, "Just a scratch," and tells him that she's trying to get to paradise. Obviously Charles is upset because he doesn't want to be the difficult relationship that Saz had. We go back to Mabel's apartment where she runs inside, and we see that the Westies are trying to kick her out of the Dudenoff apartment. She threatens to have the police show up and accuses them all of being a cult, and the Westies tell Mabel they finally admit that they illegally sublet rent-controlled apartments. So Dudenoff at one point rented all of the apartments on the floor. I guess he was locked into the rent-controlled rate, and he then allowed other people to sublet these rent-controlled apartments, probably for slightly more than the rent control, but still obscenely low rates. They said $200 a month. So he was profiting off of the rent-controlled space, and that's why his name is on the lease. So it's possible that his name is actually on all of their leases, and that he, like I said, is making money from them, paying him over what the rent-controlled amount would be. They also tell us that Helga is Rudy's ex-girlfriend from Finland, and that she is the one who is on the ham radio. They say that she had paranoia, and she's trying to reach Rudy on the ham radio because he blocked her on his cell phone. And they basically discount everything she's saying. They're like, "We never killed anyone for these rent-controlled apartments. Helga's paranoid. She doesn't know what she's talking about." And they pretty much just try and cut her out of the situation. But we're pretty sure that that's not the case. If she said that the last person to ask these questions was murdered, then I wouldn't be surprised if she's telling at least some portion of the truth. We also noticed that the youngest Sauce daughter, the youngest daughter in the Sauce family, seems to kind of have a crush on Rudy. Just wanted to point that out. Mabel leaves being pretty, satisfied with the answer they've given her, and we see the trio reconvene playing Oh Hell, and they're pretty sad about the state of their lives. They finally convince Oliver to kill Ronnie, his Finsta persona, and Charles ends up realizing that there is actually a way that he can stand in for Saz the way she always did for him, and he decides to act as her body double because they need a body for a stuntman's funeral. So he goes to Concussion, the stuntman bar, and basically the funeral is that they break these fake bottles over Charles's head over and over. We have Glenn, who breaks the final bottle only to realize that this is a real bottle and not a fake breakaway bottle, and it actually knocks Charles out, where he once again goes to this other world, and he has a memory of being on set with Saz, and we learn that Saz wanted to open up a trampoline park like the ones that she used to go to with her dad, and she calls it the Saz Pataki Impact Academy. And this also makes it much more clear why she had a trampoline book on her desk, as that was one of the screenshotted hints that we saw, along with all the other notes and papers she had. During this part, Glenn also mentions Jackass Forever specifically, and someone being shot out of a cannon. And I did look into this. First off, Jackass Forever was also released by Paramount. This is another Paramount reference. We've had a lot of these this season, and it features a group of friends doing terrifying stunts, and this man is shot out of a cannon, and he's wearing Icarus wings, which obviously signify the story of Icarus flying too too close to the sun, the wings with wax melting, and him falling out of the sky. This movie reference makes sense for the Stuntman bar because these jackass men are doing stunts, but it's also interesting because Glenn specifically mentions Rex Bailey as one of the guys who were bullying him on set, as that's why he brought up Jackass, because he was being bullied. And he says that Saz put him in a headlock until he peed himself. But Rex Bailey is not a part of the Jackass group. This is an outlier in his story, and when you look up Rex Bailey, he was actually a director who died in 1977. And 1977 is the same date that the bar was established. So just a little outlier here. I looked at Rex's bio, and it simply said, Rex Bailey was born on December 7th, 1901 in Baileyton, Tennessee, USA. He was an assistant director and production manager known for Deadline for Murder, Secret Command, and Tangier Incident. He was married to Faye Evans. He died on February 4th, 1977 in Los Angeles, California. So really not a lot to go off of here, but interesting that the date 1977 has once again been brought up. Is that a coincidence? We don't know. Like I said, Charles remembers that Saz wanted to open her own trampoline park, and he gets the trio together and they all go to the place where Charles suggested that Saz build it. The trio sees Saz's sign for the trampoline park, and they end up going into the shed after they hear some movement inside. And who do we find but Bev Mellon? And she's holding a gun and she says, "Don't move or I'll blow your fucking brains out." So this is obviously another twist for the episode. We did not expect Bev Mellon to be standing right there holding a gun and threatening the trio. I don't think she's the murderer because at this point it seems a bit obvious, but we don't know what she's doing at Saz's trampoline park. So now we're going to move into the theories portion of today's video. Here are my theories and a couple of pointers I wanted to mention. So first of all, doubles are a big thing this series. We've seen a lot of doubles between episode 1 and episode 4. There's Charles and Saz, there's the brothers, sisters, there's Ben and Glenn, there's each of the actors being the double for each member of the trio, there's Bakula and Saz, there's just like a lot of double mentions. We also have noticed that relationships are a pretty big thing this season, like romantic, but in a negative way. We've had the Sweeney Todd references of the last 2 episodes. We've had the mentioning of Charles and Camilla. We've had the mentioning of the movie Two for the Road, which also has to do with a relationship, a couple who like aren't the best together, cheat on each other, but then end up staying together. So we've just had a lot of like relationship mentions. If you want to hear me talk more about the idea that property has to do with the murder this season, then go watch my first video. We also have all the mentions of ham and the ham radio, including Ben Glenroy having the pig painted on his mirror in the 3rd season. And so we're kind of wondering, does this signify that one of the actors, Ham being someone who is like very like dramatic and like hamming it up, if one of the actors is the killer this season, which would make a lot of sense because this season is specifically about like Hollywood and the movie industry, and we have 3 brand new actors who have come in to play the trio. So I mentioned some theories throughout this video, but just to kind of add to what I've got so far, one theory I have is that it's not 1 killer, but 2. It's either going to be a double, like twins, or like a stuntman and a face, or it's going to be a relationship, a secret relationship, one that is nefarious and evil, particularly when they mentioned Sweeney Todd and Miss Lovett. That character is specifically a woman who supports Sweeney Todd murdering people and then cooks them into pies. So it would be interesting if there was like a man who was the killer, but a woman who was supporting these actions and helping him cover it up. I feel like that's very likely in this season. We already saw in this episode that the youngest Sauce daughter and Rudy, she seemed to have a thing for him. So is it possible that they're working together? Is there another anonymous relationship? does someone have a secret twin? The other theory I have is that, considering how often we talked about the line between fiction and reality being blurred this episode, it's possible that an actor felt like they needed a real murder in order to get truly into character and play the part of one of the trio. So they enacted the murder in order to make this deal go through and make it easier for them to, you know, fulfill their role, as well as ensuring that the movie gets extra publicity because there's another murder in the building, making it even more of a big deal. So is it actually an actor who the line between reality and fiction is blurred over? And lastly, we have, and one of, I think, the more likely theories, this isn't one that I came up with on my own. A lot of people have been talking about it on Reddit, and I will post down below a link to a thread which I think explains it really well, but a potential cold case. So Saz comes in with a cold case of beer and she says, I have a cold case for you guys. And a lot of people think that Saz bringing this in means that she actually did have a cold case that she had uncovered for the trio, and that somebody murdered her to keep that cold case frozen and out of the eyes of the trio. We have a couple mention of cold cases, with Charles also bringing one up and Oliver saying, like, if it's cold, that means it's not interesting, and them kind of ignoring it. But what if next season, or even part of this season, is actually about the cold case that the trio discovered that Saz found but someone was trying to cover up? It's definitely interesting to see how they take these clues from season 3 and bring them to season 4. It's, like I've said in past videos, what I've really been looking for with the show, so I am hoping that it all ties together. That's all I have for you guys today, so if you like this video, like I said, make sure to hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, comment, all those YouTube things. I love you guys so much. Thank you so much for your support and for watching these videos. You guys are literally the best. And if you have any theories on who you think the murderer is, make sure to drop it down below. My theory currently is that it's one of the 3 actors, or that it's someone in a secret relationship that hasn't revealed itself yet. I think that it's going to be 2 murderers instead of 1. And yeah, I'm just excited to see where this season goes. So drop your theories down below. Do you think that one of the actors is the murderer? Someone on the production team? Someone from Hollywood? And I love you guys so much, and I will see you next time with another video.